people and plants and bugs and all of the critters have been on this planet for how long?
Life on this planet has evolved over some 4 billion years, almost 4 billion years.
And how long have we had true commercial fertilizers? Oh, since the 1870s. It's just not true. Life is supported by the natural processes.
You know, we eat a lot of things. We think we're getting the minerals and the vitamins from the food. But how can you get it from the food if it isn't there?
So we have a big crop, but a hollow crop, and the crop doesn't have the mineral nutrients that it needs to form and function its metabolic immunological system, which has collapsed. And then we get bugs, and the bugs become pests because they're eating the fruits.
Generally, when you have something that's got excess amounts of, say, nitrogen in the leaves, then you have problems with insects because there's extra resources available, or disease organisms because there's more nitrogen than the plant needs, and everything will descend upon that plant to get the extra goodies.
Then we have to go to the chemical factory and bring in an artificially, externally applied immunological system, which is our toxic spray. So then we get to feed our children spray residue on a fruit without the mineral metabolism elements that allows the same elements that allow the immunological system of the child to form and function, and so the child gets sick.
After all of this chemical contamination of food, the very first work looking at the presence of chemicals in our children. So they take 400 school children, American school children, and check the 13 most commonly used farm chemicals, check their bodies for those through, majority was blood test and some hair testing. They couldn't find one child of 14 who didn't have unacceptable levels of all 13 chemicals, not one. And then we see leukemia. Leukemia is linked to chemical residues, and leukemia is a new disease in our kids, and it's now the largest killer of our children.
If you had the ear of the general population, Charles, what would you counsel them to do to help transition us to a more sustainable model?
I think I would try to make the point that they have to have a choice to make between allowing a little more budget for proper food to be offset by a lot less expenses in doctoring illnesses. I think I would make that point.
You've got to be eating a diversity of foods, so you get all of the different amino acids, you get all of the vitamins, you get all of the minerals in all of the different forms.
Iron, which is the major nutrient deficiency globally, vitamin A, which is killing 200 million children a year, deficiencies of that, and iodine, which is around 1 million people. If you actually look at the total burden of micronutrient deficiencies, or so-called hidden hunger, it now approaches 3 billion people, over half the world's population. And I think that's intolerable that we can allow this to occur when we have the tools to prevent it.
A lot of the micronutrients, a lot of the things that we depend on from soils, which are biologically mediated.
How can we change agricultural policy, agricultural systems in ways that will get us to where we want to be, healthy people?
The supposition that we can eat sick animals or sick food and be healthy, again, is one of those things that only somebody who has not thought about or looked into or knows anything about food would think.
Understand, you're always going to have those people that are what I call the McDonald's crowd. And they need that choice. You're always going to have that population, that group of people that really don't give a rip about their health, don't want to give a rip about their health, and never will. Fine, that's fine. But more and more, a larger and larger percentage of the population does care about their health. They do care about their environment. They care about their families.
Feeding a child is really a profound act. You're inviting that food to become a part of them. It'll either be the fuel that fuels them for that day's learning and play and activities, or it will become their organs. It'll become their bones and their eyes and their brain. You want high quality, real healthy food to build a healthy child.
Right now, over 20% of our gross national product is going to the pathology system. I'm not going to give it the credibility of calling it a health system, because all they're doing is cutting and medicating.
For the most part. Emergency trauma care, pretty good system. Don't have any complaints about that system because it's all high tech. chronic degenerative illnesses, dismal.
Doctors, generally speaking, they're highly paid plumbers. They plumb out your system, and just like plumbers don't really get into the big picture of water systems and water management in the earth, it's none of their business. You call them because your toilet stopped. So they unplug your toilet. And that's the whole gig. And I'm always surprised at two things. One, when people expect doctors to know about health, they don't know about health.
Nutrition science connected to medicine was late in coming.
Well, I had about 15 minutes of nutrition in medical school, so I think that I qualify as an authority in that subject.
Part of what's happening is that there's so much to learn in medical school that you can't possibly do it all.
You know, when I was in medical school, I do not think I had even one lecture on nutrition. Not one.
There's just so much of it, but it's not a central piece of the teaching.
The number of nutrition classes that I had in my 4 years there was one. Actually, not classes, talks. And the interesting thing about that is they actually asked me to give the talk.
21st century medicine is like this little box. And in this little box are these little treatment packages and these little protocols and things that we all feel very comfortable with saying, do this, do this, do this. Almost like an algorithm. We could just put it in our Palm Pilot and figure it out. But unfortunately, people don't fit into that little box all the time. And those that don't fit in that little box are often those that are either too subclinical because they're not sick enough yet to fit into the box, or we just we don't know enough yet about that disease entity to know what it is.
People often come to me, and the first thing out of their mouth, it's like you were saying with the rheumatoid arthritis, is, I'm coming to you because my doctor doesn't know why I'm sick. He doesn't know what caused my lupus, my rheumatoid arthritis, my whatever. And because I've been doing this for a while and I laugh inappropriately sometimes, I sort of chuckle and say, name one situation that your doctor does know the cause of.
There's a limitation to Western medicine, and that limitation is very clear to me now as I've embarked on this project here at the farm.
And the way they teach in medical school is so superficial and so biased and so conducive to people not understanding what it is that health and medicine are about. It's almost like they tried to figure out how to keep people from learning about health the most and use that as their basic philosophical approach to teaching medicine.
Doctors are going to have to look at the options. And once they start looking, they're going to say, I guess the research is here. And I guess I was kind of ignoring this for a while.
I knew that even then we were sentencing 1 out of every 4 people in the United States to have cancer diagnosed at some point in their life. That has now escalated to where in the year 2007, 1 out of every 2 can expect to be told that you have cancer.
There's children of 6 and 7 years old that are dying of cancer. You know, we all thought that was an old person's disease. How come they've got cancers? Where did it come from?
You know, when I was a kid, there were no cancer wards, there were no cancer hospitals. Cancer was one of those things that people whispered about the guy down the street had.
You can't stop the truth. We are having more health problems. We are having more struggles.
What gets our attention is, stuff that's riveting, that you can make, a newsreel out of. Buildings falling down, that's riveting. We lost 3,000 people in the Twin Towers. Look how shooken up we are from that. It really shook the whole country up. Wow, somebody's trying to kill us. But we're losing 600,000 people a year from cancer. And we don't see it that way because it's nothing personal. Nobody's trying to kill us. Well, I would say a government in collusion with big business that knows that their actions are having this kind of a fallout, that's beyond immoral, that's amoral. And I'd rather deal with somebody who's immoral, because somebody who's immoral can be redeemed.
It's the people who are selling the toxic chemicals and selling the pharmaceuticals to help somebody recover from the cancer that was induced by the toxic chemicals. Isn't this a wonderful little go-around?
Interestingly, when we evaluate cancer patients, we give them PET scans, which is a test that sees the glucose, i.e. sugar uptake of various tissues. And the ones that eat the most sugar, they're the ones with cancer. You would think that since that's the test that the oncologists use to see whether somebody has cancer, one of them might say to themselves, I wonder if these cancer cells, because they're the ones eating most sugar, maybe we shouldn't give these people sugar so much, and maybe they get better. I mean, just a thought, you know. Then comes a study in the American Journal of Oncology saying that it turns out when you give cancer patients a ketogenic diet, which means you get rid of all the carbohydrates, they often will go into remission or stop the growth of their cancer. You see, the thing is, these are all things that are well known. These things sort of make sense when you know the rules.
When I got my illness, I have to say, you know, I didn't know anything about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, so I realized, shit, you know, I got my gonads in a vice here, because I suddenly don't know what to do in a hurry. You know, I'm used to like solving farm problems. So when I finally go in front of the oncologist, you know, and I realize like, okay, I've got to talk to these guys about this illness because they're the experts in this. You know, they do this every day and they do a lot of it. And I do it not at all. And I'm asking them questions. Nutrition was sort of like irrelevant. The immune system wasn't something that we need to worry about right now. It was all about the fact that, well, what we do best is excise and kill malignant tissue. That's what we do. You know, we extract it or we kill it with radioactive wavelengths, or we kill it with chemotoxic cocktails. And all of a sudden, I feel like I'm in some industrial ag farm field. Like, this is the way they do it again. You know, this is the way they do it again. And I know that this is wrong right from the get-go because that's not what my experience has been in the farm field. And it was really weird because after I started asking the hard questions and I wasn't getting any answers, or my questions were being marginalized as being irrelevant, silly, even ignorant, stupid, when I walked out of there and I realized, Christ, I'm on my own. And it was sort of like an aha moment. Because I realized, okay, Brunetti, you know, guess what, pal? You got to walk your talk. You know, whatever worked out there on that dairy farm in its entirety, whether it was the crops, whether it was the livestock, you got to figure a way to dial that mindset, that strategy into saving your life. And you got 6 months to do it. Maybe 2 years if you're lucky, according to them. And it was weird because when I said that to myself, I actually said those words to myself because I had to, like, you know, slap myself saying, you know, this is not about woo-woo anymore. And so I come home and I realize, okay, now I've got to do this thing. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what do you do on a farm? All right. You know, you say, okay, you ask the client, what are the yield and production and health limiting factors on the farm? You know, one by one. You soil test. You water test. You may do mold and mycotoxin testing. You forage or tissue test. And you put all the information in front of you and you say, what's the connection? Starting with the soil and the water. And then there are flags. It's like a regular test. The flag shows up. I just said, I can do this. I just knew I could do this. I wasn't guaranteeing myself that, but I knew that I had a better chance of fixing this thing called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma than they did. I just knew it in my bones. And I was lucky because the average person doesn't have the experiential relationship. So what did I do? I did blood tests, I did urine tests, I did hair analyses, I did DMPS challenges, which flush heavy metals out of the system. And what do I find out? I find out that, oh man, I got high viral loads. Viruses are connected to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lo and behold, I have low immunity, natural killer cell function, T cell function. Whoa, I find I have elevated mercury levels, elevated arsenic levels. Both cause cancer and suppress immunity. I'm starting to feel good about the bad news, because I'm solving problems here. And I thought, okay, now get rid of this stuff. Dump the junk. You got to dump that junk. And rev up the immune system. And I knew how to do that because I did it with cows. I did it with botanicals. I did it with colostrum serums. I did it with nutraceutical injections. I did it with nutrition and foods. So I was already on a pretty wholesome diet, but I just revved up the volume and said, okay, we're going for IV nutraceuticals. We're going to be taking specific botanicals. I'm going to be taking certain things that, eliminate viruses. And next thing you know, within 6 months, I'm doing testing on a very periodic basis. My numbers are coming into the right picture. My immune numbers are coming up. My viral loads are dropping. The metals are disappearing over time. And so here I am, 8 years after the diagnosis. Cancer's not an issue. And when it's all over, it just cranks up your confidence, a few more steps, because you realize, if you really want to do this stuff, you can do it. And so it's been my mission to share this with other people because they're getting a raw deal from the American medical system. They're getting screwed royally. Even if they're getting some relief, they're getting screwed royally. Most of us are getting screwed with our food, we're getting screwed with our medicine, we're getting screwed with our education, we're getting screwed with our economics. We're just getting screwed. And, the corporate oligarchy owning all of these, it's like Wendell Berry said one time, we franchised all our basic needs. Transportation, medicine, education, agriculture, all our basic needs we franchised out to corporations. So why should we be surprised, what we've been dealt? So what do we do about that? They own the franchise. You get into the non-franchise arena. So medicine is something that you don't need necessarily insurance for. It's nice to have it if you have it, but they're not going to pay for this stuff even if you have insurance. So have the insurance so just in case you fell out of a tree, or you need emergency care, it's great to have it. But if you have cancer or lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, ALS, guess what? You're not going to get the real care you need. You're not.
These are not the right questions for doctors. They're plumbers. And as soon as we get the fact that they're very good at the plumbing situation, and people get stopped toilets. And so they should be called good plumbers to do that. Otherwise, there's a whole another thing that's needed. And that has to do mostly with food.
You need food-based approaches to solve these dysfunctional food systems that have their roots in dysfunctional agriculture systems that are not providing all the nutrients people need for healthy and productive lives. So we really, what my mission is in life is to try to get the world to understand they have to explicitly link agriculture to human health. And until that's done, we won't find sustainable solutions to the problems that we're seeing. The major killers of people on Earth will never be solved. It'll stay around forever.